It takes a monster to kill children, but to watch monsters kill children again and again and to do nothing about it is not just insanity, but inhumanity. Now, this is what the American poet Amanda Gorman tweeted in the immediate aftermath of the school shooting in Texas, in which 19 children and 2 teachers were killed. The United States is again haunted by its old question: why is it so easy for people to purchase and keep firearms? In Ukraine, the war continues to exact a horrific toll of death and devastation. And the West African nation of Mali is trapped in an incessant Islamist insurgency, and it has now been rocked by yet another attempt to topple its military government. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh, and it's been yet another week of conflict and casualties in different parts of the globe. So let's start with the world's biggest conflict zone, Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that anywhere from 50 to 100 Ukrainian troops are being killed in the Donbas region every day. After the fall of Mariupol, the focus of the war has now shifted to the Donbas cities of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. If these 2 cities fall, then Russia will effectively control the Donbas province. This could be a decisive moment in the war. America continues to supply Ukraine with sophisticated weapons, such as the M77 howitzer guns. On the 21st of May, the Russian military claimed that it had destroyed a major consignment of arms sent by the West to Ukraine. But at the same time, Washington has also begun to ring alarm bells because it is concerned about the danger of further escalation if Ukraine were to strike targets deep inside the Russian territory. The proposed 6th round of sanctions is also beginning to falter, even as President Vladimir Putin has accused the West of being responsible for the food scarcity due to disruption in the supply chain because of its sanctions against Russia. So even as the war rages, both Russia and Ukraine remain unwilling to compromise. So what is the way forward? Can talks and diplomacy really resolve this crisis? A suggestion by Henry Kissinger, the former American Secretary of State, that Ukraine should cede territory to Russia for a peace deal has created quite a bit of a stir. Volodymyr Zelensky has compared the idea to the appeasement of Nazi Germany. Zelensky wants to push Ukraine back to its pre-war frontiers, but he wants to do this with Western help. But voices in the West are being heard which suggest that this may simply be impossible. The question, of course, is, do America and Europe have an appetite for a prolonged confrontation with Russia? We will know soon. Until then, the havoc will continue. Just last week on this show, we spoke about a mass shooting in the United States of America, a hate crime where an 18-year-old gunman, Peyton Gendron, had specifically targeted black Americans, killing 10 of them in Buffalo, New York. And this week, there's been more gun violence. And the victims this time round that were targeted are young school children who are inside of their classrooms. The gunman is another 18-year-old, Salvador Ramos, who chose the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, to carry out his massacre. He killed 19 children and 2 adults. Most students killed at the Robb Elementary School were in grades 2, 3, and 4. All of them were 10 years or younger. This is not the first time that an incident like this has happened in the United States, and it won't be the last time either, because the President of the United States of America, when he addressed the nation after this gut-wrenching massacre, was just found wringing his hands.
As a nation, I think we all must be there for them, everyone. And we must ask, when in God's name will we do what needs to be done to, if not completely stop, fundamentally change the amount of the carnage that goes on in this country? To state the obvious, and Corey and a lot of other people here, I'm sick and tired. I'm just sick and tired of what's going on and continues to go on.
Being sick and tired will not stop the carnage. Deep down in, every politician in America knows this. They knew this 10 years ago when the Sandy Hook massacre happened. when another deranged 20-year-old Adam Lanza had shot his mother dead at home and had then gone to the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown and had shot 26 people dead. 20 of his victims were children, all of them 6 or 7 years old. Children being killed in school is almost uniquely American, and the Americans know this, because nowhere else in the world are incidents of this nature reported with this frequency. Consider this: guns are now the leading cause of death for children in America, more than car crashes, drowning or suffocation. Since the beginning of 2022, in just the last 5 months, there have been a total of 27 school shootings in the United States. The Americans must ask themselves, how is this acceptable? Back in 1994, when Joe Biden was the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Biden had managed to muster the numbers to pass the Public Safety and Recreational Firearms Use Protection Act, commonly known as the Assault Weapons Ban. It prohibited the manufacture and sale for civilian use of certain semi-automatic weapons. The act also banned magazines that could accommodate 10 rounds or more. This ban was allowed to lapse in 2004 when George Bush was the president. But in the 10-year period that it existed, the number of fatalities linked to mass shootings in the United States witnessed a sharp dip. But today, there is no consensus in the United States for a ban on assault rifles. In the last 5 years, there's been more than one incident of mass shooting every single day in the United States. You need to hear that again. More than one mass shooting every single day in the last 5 years. The United States has one of the highest rates of gun deaths anywhere in the world. Only Colombia, Mexico and Costa Rica, who suffer from chronic gang wars, have a worse ratio of gun-related deaths per 100,000 of the population. With an estimated 400 million firearms, there are more guns than people in the United States of America. The gun and ammunition industry is worth a jaw-dropping $70 billion. On an average, Americans end up purchasing 20 million new guns every single year. And making things worse is that the United States of America has some of the most lax gun laws anywhere in the world. The 18-year-old shooter who shot dead 19 children and 2 adults in Texas had no criminal record or history of mental illness. He purchased 2 AR-15 rifles legally, along with 375 rounds of ammunition between the 17th and the 20th of May, which he then fired at the children in a school. The gun lobby in the United States of America is very powerful. Officially, it contributes just about $5 million each year to ensure that lawmakers don't tighten the gun laws. Has America become the most dangerous place in the world for innocent civilians and school children? The answer must disturb the conscience of every American. There cannot be a louder wake-up call than gunfire and the heartbroken sobs of the bereaved.
When you can't walk, when you can't get up, you do not overcome evil with more evil.
The ethnic and the cultural genocide of the Uyghur minority Muslims and also their wholesale detention in internment camps across the Xinjiang province has been reported widely since 2017. But through the years, China has maintained that these are just re-education camps. But now, in a major leak of documents that have been described as the Xinjiang Police Files, obtained by a network of hackers, the chilling details of what actually goes on inside of these re-education camps has been revealed. Keep in mind, the Xinjiang Files are not victim testimonies, but rather these are police records of their protocol inside the internment camps. According to the police documents, any Uyghur detainee, if he were to try to flee from the so-called re-education camp, had to be shot on sight. Armed guards are to be present in all areas of the camps. Machine guns and snipers are to be stationed on watchtowers with a shoot-to-kill policy. Any student being transferred should always be blindfolded, with his hands cuffed and feet shackled. The Xinjiang Files are dated to be from 2017 till 2018. They contain more than 300,000 personal records, 2,800 pictures of detainees, and 10 sets of police instructions. An estimated 10 to 12% of the Uyghur population had been detained in these re-education camps. The youngest detainee is said to be a 15-year-old girl, while there are pictures of children with their shaven heads who are as young as 6 years old. Listening to what China dubs as illegal lectures or having encrypted apps on phones could actually result in a punishment of 10 years at the re-education camp. While people who did not use their phones enough to evade China's all-pervasive digital surveillance were also handed out similar punishments. In one instance, a man was jailed for almost about 16 years after his beard was termed to be Islamic, while another man was jailed for almost over 10 years for having studied Islamic scripture for a few days with his grandmother back in 2010. Michelle Bachelet, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, is in China this week. This is the first such visit since 2005. There are hopes that she could be given access to these re-education camps to investigate into the human rights abuses.
I have been committed to undertaking this visit, the first visit by a UN High Commissioner for Human Rights to China in 17 years, because for me, it is a priority to engage with the government of China directly, to see how we can collaborate on human rights issues domestically, regional and global. For development, peace and security to be sustainable, locally and across borders, human rights have to be at the core.
The Chinese response has been this statement by President Xi Jinping, where he said, and I quote him here, China had successfully embarked on a human rights path that suits its national conditions. There is no perfect ideal country on the human rights issue. There is no need for a teacher who commands other countries, and we can't politicize and instrumentalize the human rights issue, engage in double standards, and use human rights as an excuse to interfere into the internal matters of other countries. Many fear that China could actually use this opportunity to whitewash its crimes. The United States has dubbed this visit by Michelle Bachelet to be a mistake. So far, neither media nor human rights agencies have been allowed unrestricted access to verify what actually happens in these re-education camps. Rare guarded tours, like the one for an EU delegation in 2019, have been offered by the Chinese government. But first-person accounts, satellite imagery and also leaked Chinese government documents present some hard and compelling evidence about the nature of these re-education camps. They've actually been dubbed as the Chinese equivalent of concentration camps. The detained Uighurs have been forced to work like slaves. They've been force-fed pork, which is prohibited in Islam. They've been beaten to give up their Islamic faith. They've been forced to swear allegiance to the Chinese Communist Party, and Uyghur women have been forcibly sterilized. China is trying to erase the unique culture and identity of the 12 million Uyghurs. This is China's Sinification project, and to achieve this, Beijing has barred Uyghurs from even essential cultural practices like attending traditional wedding ceremonies, Muslim prayers, or even maintaining contact with family members of someone who's been sent to a re-education camp. It has also demolished large historical mosques and other Muslim shrines in the Xinjiang province. So can the global community exert pressure on China to stop this genocide? Chinese economic behemoth has proven to be way too big for any concerted global action on human rights abuse. And the loudest silence on Xinjiang is heard from Pakistan, which calls itself an Islamic state. But Beijing knows that it can buy the silence of Islamabad. There have been 2 coups in 2 years in the West African nation of Mali, a country that's been rocked by political turbulence and war against an Islamist insurgency. So it hardly came as a surprise when on the 16th of May, the military junta in power announced a 3rd coup had been foiled. The big question, of course, is France behind this failed coup, as the junta indicates? The military spokesperson did not directly blame any foreign power, but spoke of foreign interference by a Western state. So what's actually going on in Mali? And why does it matter to the security of the rest of West Africa? Our next report explains.
This has become an all too familiar scene in Mali. The spokesperson of the Malian transitional government appeared on state television with an extraordinary announcement. No further details were given.
In an unhealthy attempt to break the momentum of Mali's refoundation, a small group of anti-progressive Malian officers and non-commissioned officers attempted a coup on the night of 11th and 12th May 2022. These soldiers were supported by a Western state. The attempt was foiled thanks to the vigilance and professionalism of Mali's defense and security forces.
Sources speaking on condition of anonymity indicated that about 10 people had been arrested for the failed coup. In August 2020, the former president Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta was ousted. A transitional government under President Ba Ndwa was sworn in, but just 9 months later, in May 2021, Colonel Assimi Goïta, the man who had engineered the first coup, deposed the transitional government and declared himself to be the transitional president. Elections for a democratic government were promised to be held in February 2022, but now they have been postponed till 2024. In the interim, Mali's relationship with France has deteriorated. Over the last decade, Mali has been rocked by a deadly Islamist insurgency. Groups affiliated to the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda have wreaked havoc on this part of the Sahel region of Africa. The violence has since spread to neighboring Burkina Faso and Niger. France got involved at the behest of the Malian government in 2013. About 5,000 French troops have been stationed in the West African nation to fight the Islamists. Initially, the French troops had been warmly welcomed, but over the years, relations have soured. And especially since Colonel Assimi Goïta assumed charge, the relationship between Mali and France has nosedived. On the 31st of January 2022, the French ambassador was expelled by the military junta when he opposed the postponement of elections to 2024. On the 22nd of April, the French army claimed Russian mercenaries were burying bodies outside a Malian military base. On the 26th of April, Mali suspended French media outlets like Radio France and France 24 on allegations of spreading fake news. Emmanuel Macron has announced that France will pull out all its troops from Mali. The process will take 6 to 8 months. Instead of the French troops, Mali is now relying on the Russian private military contractor Wagner Group to fight against the Islamists. It is this instability in Mali that has raised serious concerns across the region. There have been a total of 6 coups in Central and Western Africa since 2020, and all of them have been sparked by misgovernance, corruption, and an inability to stem the violence from radical groups. This latest failed coup attempt to topple the military government in Mali is an indicator of the turbulence that is yet to sweep across the Western Sahel region. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Jerusalem Day marks a high point in Israeli history. It is a national holiday to celebrate the fall of East Jerusalem to the Israeli forces during the Six-Day War of 1967. And it is celebrated with a victory parade that's also known as the March of the Flags. This year it is being celebrated from the evening of the 28th till the 29th of May. Predictably, it has become a source of tension. Thousands of ultra-nationalist Jews descend onto the streets of Jerusalem's old city, entering from the Damascus Gate through the main thoroughfare of the Muslim quarter to walk up to the Wailing Wall. Last year, violence broke out when some far-right Israelis started chanting, "Death to Arabs." The route of the march last year was changed in the last minute in a bid to try and avoid a conflagration. This year, the Israeli administration has decided to maintain the usual route through the Muslim quarter for the march. The tension is palpable, as happens on the eve of any conflict. The question, of course, is, will the authorities be able to enforce peace? That is what sensible citizens hope for in an environment where optimism has too often proved to be an illusion. The capture of the Azovstal steel plant by Russia has given us some of the most defining images of the Ukraine war so far. More than 2,000 Ukrainian soldiers have surrendered. Most of them are said to be from the Azov regiment. What fate awaits the surrendered Azov soldiers is a matter of speculation. But the wives of many Azov soldiers who are holed up at the Azovstal steel plant say that their husbands were not amongst the evacuees. They have no idea what has happened to their husbands and are now demanding for some urgent answers.
The rain of fire that descended on the Azovstal steel plant on the 15th of May broke the back of the Ukrainian resistance. For almost 3 long months, the Ukrainians had held out against the relentless Russian shelling that reduced the key port city to a smoldering shell. Eventually, the Ukrainians waved the white flag to surrender. President Volodymyr Zelensky made a public statement announcing the end of Ukraine's mission to defend the Azovstal steel plant.
As regards the situation in Mariupol, thanks to the actions of the Ukrainian military, the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Intelligence Negotiating Group, the International Committee of the Red Cross and the UN, we hope that we will be able to save the lives of our guys. There are severely wounded ones among them. They are given care. I want to stress out Ukraine needs Ukrainian heroes alive. That's our principle. I think that any adequate person will understand these words. The operation to save the defenders of Mariupol has been started by our military intelligence. The work continues to return guys home. And this work requires delicacy and time.
More than 2,000 Ukrainian soldiers were marched out from the Azovstal steel plant. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, these soldiers have been taken to a penal colony near Donetsk. But now many women have come forth stating that their husbands, who had been holed up at the Azovstal steel plant for its defense, are not among the evacuees.
The last time there was a connection was on May 12th. Only text messages for the past month, and very few of them. I'm alive, I'm alive. We don't need much more information. He's alive, and thank God for that.
These women are fearful of the fate their husbands may have suffered.
Concerning Azov, it's obvious that Russia has a different stance on them. Even when they were offering them to give up about 1.5 months ago, they said that the armed forces would be all right, but that Azov would be worse off. However, they said they would stand till the last breath. The guys are young, 20 to 25 years old.
In an official statement, the Russian Defense Ministry has declared that everyone from inside Azovstal has been evacuated. Only the dead have been left behind. But these women say they are hoping against hope for their husbands. Even the fate of the surrendered soldiers is difficult to predict. Ukraine wants a prisoner swap, but Russia wants to put these soldiers on trial. Some legislators, including Vyacheslav Volodin, the chair of the State Duma, want the Azov regiment to be tried as neo-Nazis. A petition in the Russian Supreme Court seeks to designate the Azov regiment as a terrorist organization. The Azov regiment was formed in 2014 as an extreme right-wing militia to fight the Russian-backed separatists in Donbas. It has since been fully integrated with the Ukrainian army. The fighting has ended at Azovstal. But for the wives of the Azov soldiers, who have no information about the whereabouts of their husbands, there is no sense of closure. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
The love for one's country can take people to the ends of the earth. At the conclusion of this episode, we want to tell you the story of 33-year-old Antonina Samailova. Her father and brother have both volunteered to fight against the Russians, but she decided to tell the world about the fortitude of Ukraine in a very unique way by showing the flag the Ukrainian flag at the peak of Mount Everest.
That bringing Ukrainian flag to the top of the world during the Everest season, when all eyes are on Everest, actually, like of all the world, is a good opportunity to bring the attention of many people, saying that it's not over yet in Ukraine, like the war is still there.
Antonina Samailova is the only Ukrainian at the top of Everest this year. And as she unfurled the Ukrainian flag at the top of the Everest, the only thing she wanted was peace. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh. Thanks for watching.